Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us as we discuss the North Meridian Avenue multi-use path. We want to thank you all for being here on tonight's call. I'd like to recognize some of the elected officials that have joined us here this evening. I want to welcome our mayor, Stephen Miner, as well as representatives from Commissioner Fernandez's office. We have Kira and Sydney, and Luis Atencio with Commissioner Magazine's office. My name is Gabriela Gonzalez. I'm the Mid-Beach Neighborhood Affairs Coordinator and your host for tonight's meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Carla to provide some additional introductions for the rest of the team and some opening remarks for our presentation. Carla?
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Carla Lopez. I'm the project manager for this project, and I'm with the Office of Capital Improvements. For the project team, we have our department director, David Gomez, our assistant director, Maria Serna, our division director, Ariel Guitian. Our senior PM on this project is Mosen. He's here with us. And then you have me. And before I hand it off to Chen Moore to do their introductions, I wanted to give a quick overview of the project. It's a shared use path, so it means it's a path to be used by pedestrians and cyclists, and it is separated from traffic just for an added level of safety. And in this case, it goes along Meridian Avenue on the edge of the golf course, and then it turns at 28th Street. I want everyone just to know where this project came from. The project was identified in some studies, and it was adopted by Commission as part of the city's master transportation plan. And the goal is for this path to serve as a safe link between the existing bike infrastructure, so whatever we already have south of Dade on Meridian, and then the bike lanes up on Prairie Avenue north of 28th. So with that, I'll hand it to our designer, Chen Moore, and they'll walk us through more details, and then at the end, we'll have some time for questions.
Thank you, Carla. My name is Arnaldo Rahman. I am the civil engineer for this project. Also in this call with me is Greg Mendes. He's the principal engineer and will be the EOR for this project, and Peter Salomon, the landscape architect, who will also be speaking to the landscape elements of this project in this presentation. So as a brief overview of what we will be discussing today, we'll be going over the project location. We'll be showing some pictures of the existing conditions and go over the scope of work. And then we'll show you some renderings and sections to give you all a good idea of what it is we're proposing, the planting palette, and then also some of the lighting fixtures which we'll be utilizing. So as far as the project location, as Carla mentioned, this will be along Meridian. It will start at the intersection of Dade Boulevard and Meridian Avenue, and then run north along Meridian on the western swale up to 28th Street, where it will turn east and then end at the intersection with Prairie Avenue. Here are some existing images of the conditions as they are today. You will notice along this western corridor, there is some vegetation in the area. Now, we are doing what we can to avoid impacting this vegetation, but where that is not possible, we are proposing relocation and in some cases removal. Where removal is proposed, we are obviously proposing the appropriate mitigation for this. So the scope of work for this is relatively simple. It's a 10-foot wide multi-use path. Multi-use will be shared by pedestrians and cyclists alike. There will be some minor grading and drainage for this project, but the intent is to maintain the existing topography and the existing runoff patterns. In terms of landscaping, as I mentioned, there will be some tree removals and relocations involved in this project. Also, some removal of the existing hedges. Those hedges will be replaced and expanded, especially between the proposed path and the golf course to provide screening between the two. And then we'll also be proposing new plantings along the path to mitigate and exceed what's there today and irrigation for that landscaping. In addition, we'll also have proposed lighting for the path for safety reasons. So this is what the typical section will look like. As mentioned, it'll be a 10-foot wide concrete path. It will be Miami Beach red color, and on both sides of the path, we will have a 2-foot strip of sod. Because of the proximity of the path to the golf course, the existing soils are contaminated. So in that buffer, we'll be excavating the existing material, placing some clean fill Um, and yes. Now, because of the proximity of the golf course, of the path to the golf course, we are coordinating with the golf course to mitigate the risk of any mishit balls impacting users. Now, we've identified with the golf course these hotspots, and in these areas, we are proposing to augment the vegetation and put dense trees and shrubs to help, again, mitigate any safety risks. We are also actively coordinating with the golf course on possibly placing some netting along these sections. Those conversations are ongoing, and we are refining this with the golf course.
Hi, everyone. As Arnaldo mentioned, we're also the landscape architect on the project. For context, th this presentation runs from south to north from Dade Boulevard to West 28th Street. Uh, Um, in the first area, we will be removing several trees and replacing. This is probably the area of most removals, but we'll be focused on making this a nice new entry area. Just in general, the project will use all Florida native or Florida friendly plants in conjunction with approved list of City of Miami Beach and to meet all mitigation and permit purposes. The path varies from south to north a little bit in terms of the distance to the golf cart path, and also we've kept it as close to the road as possible to avoid conflicts with that, and also conflicts with existing trees. Um, in these middle areas, most of the trees are able to either remain or relocate. This area is mostly some larger coconut palms, things like that. Uh, So there's several areas where we need to mitigate for the golf balls and things, or sorry, the golf balls that are hit by the users. And next. So in certain areas for this, we will have to use a denser vegetation at different heights and thicknesses. So some taller palms and then some medium-sized hedges and shrubs will help to, in addition to netting, it'll both screen from the golf balls and uh, uh, just make for a more aesthetically pleasing ride for the users. Next, in certain areas, the landscape area gets wider, and in some other areas it's much more narrow in between the two paths. So in those areas, we'll have to be very strategic about um, screening both for privacy and for safety issues related to the golf balls. We have identified certain hotspots along the path, and those particular areas will be, mitigated further with more vegetation. In this area, the golf cart path crosses the entry to the golf course, one of the drive entries to the golf course, and turns to the east. And this area along 28th is highly vegetated, and we'll be maintaining as much as possible the character of this area and not affecting the local residences and connecting to the adjacent transportation projects slated to the north. These are the existing trees and palms that we'll be hopefully mostly maintaining and also relocating several. So this is kind of the local palette that we're working with. And then we'll also be adding to this, replacing some of the sea grapes that will be removed, as well as integrating some flowering trees and as well as evergreen trees and some smaller and medium-sized hedges and palms to both fill in aesthetically and provide safety from the golf course. Um, we also, provide ground covers and other low maintenance options as lower plants that will help fill in and just help beautify and really bring together the entire design and landscape along the path.
Thank you, Peter. And then finally, as mentioned, we'll also be proposing lighting along the path. Um, this will show tentatively where that lighting would go. It is important to note that this lighting is really only meant for the path itself. Obviously, some of it will spill over into the adjacent road, but it's not meant to augment the existing lighting for the roadway. It's just meant to provide additional lighting for the path for safety. And the fixture will be this Albertslund maxi post, which is what the city typically uses and what it has been using in similar projects. And with that, thank you all for your time, and we'll now turn it over for any questions.
Thank you, Peter and Arnaldo. I'm going to, before we open it up for public comment, just want to recognize Albert Rosales with Commissioner Dominguez's office, as well as Kevin Kitsos, who is representing our Vice Mayor, Monica Mateo Salinas' office. Thank you both for being here with us. For those of you that have questions and comments for the project team, we're going to open it up now for public comment. The raise your hand feature is located at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that button, that'll prompt us so that way we know you have a question or comment. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. Just please state your full name and your question or comment here for the team. So I'm going to turn it over to our first caller, Dylan. If you can please unmute yourself there and state your question or comment.
Hi there, Dylan Yallis here. Thank you for taking the time. I actually sent a longer email to Gabriela Gonzalez, and she said she would get back to me. But I just wanted to point out, there's a street WhatsApp group where we've been discussing this, and there's quite a bit of concern around this project, and essentially, I would say a chorus of disapproval. And I just wanted to mention some of the points. One, we don't really understand what real purpose or benefit this path serves. In particular for pedestrians, there's already a sidewalk. We have a lot of people on the street who are cyclists, and they point out that there's just very, very little traffic here. So the idea of spending millions of dollars, on this particular street is just hard to understand. Especially, I'm sure you guys as civil engineers who are on the call are aware, we have a significant problem on this street with drainage and water. I mean, I could show you pictures, but it essentially becomes an ocean sometimes when it rains. And if we're going to spend millions of dollars, why aren't we solving the drainage problem first before putting in something like this, which doesn't seem all that necessary? And I've heard, quotes of over $3 million for this. There are some other concerns, like, as you point out, safety on the path. The problem is putting netting in, that just sounds like an aesthetic. It doesn't sound particularly aesthetic. We're certainly concerned about reduced property values on the street and so on, but really it's like, why do we need this? And it seems like there's much better ways to spend the money. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Dylan, for your comments. I know that I did receive your email, and I want to make sure that we're putting together a well-crafted response for all of the comments and questions that you shared with us. Like I mentioned, it's kind of a complex layer of different departments that we have to work with in order to get some of those responses, particularly the questions related to drainage. But I do want to make sure that some of your questions and comments go away answered on this call. So perhaps if anyone from the CIP team, David, I know that I saw Ghassan a little earlier on the call, perhaps the purpose as to why the project was proposed. I know that this is related to the transportation master plan, and I don't know if there's any support maybe from Ghassan or David with respect to that and the purpose as to why this project was brought forth.
Good evening, Dylan. This is David Gomez, Director of Capital Improvements. I want to thank you for your comments. I think they're not only fair points, but well received. And I'm sure you've been a resident long enough to know that the city's engaged in a vast improvement to the pedestrian and cycle options for the residents. It is an urban environment that we have to accommodate all forms of transportation. The main purpose of this project is to fulfill one of the gaps in our pedestrian and bicycle master plan. This was adopted by commission, I believe it was 2012 or 14. And unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to do the entire master plan at once. So we have to do it in pieces. This is just the next piece that we were working on to get done. It is vital to bicyclist safety that they have a place that's not on the road. Can we leave the bicyclist on the road? Yes, but eventually they're going to turn the corner or get to Dade Boulevard, and there it's just simply not as safe. So by creating that network throughout the city, it gives people an alternative means of traveling throughout our city. So that's really the goal of this project, is to expand our network of pathways. And that's what we're hoping to achieve. Regarding your question, and I'm sorry I didn't write them all down. Regarding your question about drainage, there is a project scheduled for drainage in the neighborhood, very similar to the pedestrian and bicycle master plan. The drainage master plan can't be done all at once. Aside from just the scope, it's very painful to a neighborhood to do everything at once. So it is scheduled. It's scheduled way down the line. There was a project that began for the Bayshore South neighborhood, and we got a lot of feedback from the residents that they just didn't want us to raise the roads and fulfill that project. So a lot of that improvement just didn't happen at that time. It got pushed down, and it'll be addressed sometime in the future. It's just not happening right now.
Dylan, I think your hand is up for a follow-up question there.
Okay,
No?
sorry. Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I guess I was muted again. Thank you for that response. I mean, I guess, well, one, just on the need for the pedestrian side is a little confusing because there's a sidewalk there. Your point on Dade Boulevard makes sense, but of course I think there's a bike lane on Dade Boulevard, right? So we're really talking about this particular street, which seems low traffic. So I would just sort of think that to your point, that everything has to be done piecemeal. One would think this would be one of the lower priority pieces. And I guess I'm just wondering, should you consider the views on the street? For example, if we all decided that really drainage is a much more pressing problem, that's kind of where my vote would be. To your point, it's kind of something we're addressing way down the line. Why don't we consider the bike path later, which seems less pressing, and do the thing that really is impacting the houses on the street very directly sooner?
That's a difficult one to resolve or to reconcile. It's just a matter of funding, timing, planning. It's a very difficult thing to balance. When you're talking about the drainage project, it's not a little bit of money. It's not even a couple million. It's a lot more than that. We have a huge number of capital projects that are dealing with drainage improvements and water line replacements and a whole bunch of full-blown neighborhood improvement projects that just have the priority right now over this street. And that prioritization, I'll have to let Public Works address why they set that prioritization. This particular shared use path is the link between Prairie and Dade Boulevard and beyond. As you know, I'm sure you've seen the bike lane on Meridian south of Dade Boulevard. That goes pretty far down on Meridian. And then there's the bike lane that's fairly new on Prairie that goes north through 41st. This is that connecting link.
Thank you, David. And to your point, and I could be wrong, and that's why I want to make sure that when I do respond to Dylan's email, we have all the information from Public Works before doing so, because I know that Public Works does have a stormwater master plan. There are a set of different neighborhood improvements, which are some of those more larger projects and critical need projects as well, that are, as David mentioned, really regulated on a scheduled basis based off of funding and needs for the neighborhood. So again, we don't want to speak on behalf of Public Works, but Dylan, I'm happy to reconnect with you in email and share all of those updates with you as soon as I have confirmation. I'm going to really quickly turn it over to our next caller, Jalena. If you can please unmute yourself there and state your question or comment for the team. Jolena, can you hear us? You might be on mute there. While she gets her audio sorted, I'm going to turn it over to Brian. If you can please unmute yourself
Hear
there.
me?
Yes, now we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having some difficulties
No
here.
worries.
Hi,
Hello.
Gabriella. Hi, Gabriella.
Hi, Brian, if you can just give us one quick minute, I'm going
Sure.
to let Jolena ask her question and then I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Gabriella. This is Yelena Dimitriadis on behalf of Bayshore HOA. Thank you for putting this meeting together. First and foremost, I want to say, I mean, this is the first time that the HOA hears about this construction. My assumption is you told me it was at 30% at this point. I don't know why the city is waiting till 30% to let us know, because we haven't had any opportunity to let the residents within Bayshore know about this or have any input in any way or shape. So I'm a little bit surprised now that I found out that this dates back all the way to 2012 or 2014, which we're talking about 10 to 14 years ago. You know, I'm as well as Dylan a little bit surprised why this is like the foremost importance here to begin with. Second of all, I'd like to address the bike path connectivity, which one of the main things when it pertains to the bike path connectivity is connecting it to existing schools, youth centers, which this portion doesn't do at all in any way or shape, first of all. Second of all, Meridian in itself is a huge problem because it's really wide, which invites high speeds on the street, which we've seen, you know, and now my understanding is it's about 11 feet on each side. You're adding another 10 feet of a path to all of that, so broaden it even more. Again, don't understand the logic behind it. I am not personally a proponent of netting neither. I think it's aesthetically not pleasing in any way or shape. I do think there's other projects within this neighborhood that should have priority to this one. So um, I'm just a little bit baffled, to be all honest.
Hi,
Thank you.
Jelena, how are you?
Hi, David. How are
Good to
you?
hear from
Good.
you.
Nice.
I do apologize. I take your comment to heart about the community not seeing it before the 30%. The truth is there's not a lot to show before the 30% besides the master plan. Now is when we actually have something that we can show, some images that we can get your feedback. Now we can sit with you, hear what you have to say. I don't disagree with you on the netting. This is not the typical driving range netting, 70 feet high, whatever that is. This is only meant for those that low range errant ball, and that's still to be determined. We'll still work with the golf course and our consultants to figure out exactly what's needed and where, so that we're only putting in what we need to. The first line of defense is always going to be landscaping and other forms of protection so that we can address some of those concerns about safety. But happy to meet with you in the HOA or the neighborhood association to go through and get your feedback.
Well, if I can just add to this, I mean, one big thing for us is we really don't want to lose any more green space within the neighborhood, and also not mature trees. I mean, I think you are inhibiting the view for those people that live across the street with the netting in every way or shape. The other thing is, I understand when you say, hey, we have not much to show till we're at 30%. But as you know, over the past year, we've had numerous meetings with you, and your department, as well as with the traffic department. And this topic never came up. And, you know, I'm not a pushy person, and maybe I need to change that a little bit and inundate you with emails and questions on a weekly basis. But to just get this kind of thrown at us, uh, it is kind of frustrating because, I mean, my understanding is that it's not very well perceived from especially the area along Meridian and the homeowners there. So it would have been nice to, come and reach out to us first and foremost without spending all this time and money so far and coming up with a 30% mark.
And I will apologize again for not doing so
The
beforehand. This was part, if you remember the original neighborhood improvement project, this was in that project. It was part of that project. So I was under the impression the neighborhood had seen it. I will apologize again for not reaching out sooner to go over the master plan.
Thank you, David. I want to quickly acknowledge our commissioner. I believe he's on the call, Commissioner Suarez. Thank you for being here with us as well. I'm going to turn it back to Brian. I know that you had a question or comment there, and we unfortunately had to cut you off. If you can please unmute yourself and
Hi,
state your.
this is Brian Sereni. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to say that Meridian is a safe street. I'm an avid cyclist and regularly ride this street with my children. For the past 10 years, they learned to ride on that street going from Town Prairie down to Lincoln Road on Meridian. It's a great street, just the way it is for cyclists. I do have a question. Does the path end before the house on 2800 Prairie? I'm not sure if I saw that clearly on the,
Yes, it does.
it does, so it ends before there, okay. Question, how tall is the netting proposed to be on the street there?
The height of the netting is still being determined. We're still meeting with the golf course to narrow down the areas that need it. And then we'll see based on the canopy slated for that area, for the tree slated for that area, how high we need to do that. But we want to make sure we cover it from any variables in there.
You have
But it
a
won't
rough
be,
estimate range of like 5 feet, 10 feet, 100 feet, like
will
what are we
not be
talking?
100 feet.
Okay,
We're talking 8 to 10, maybe. That's an
ju-
estimate. That's
yeah,
just to cover that drive line, but to
you
be
may want to
determined.
keep in mind that netting on driving ranges is typically between 150 and 175 feet. So you just go by a driving range, go by a top golf facility. The reason why the netting is that high is because balls don't just go 5, 10 feet off the ground; they go up into the sky. There's an estimated 40,000 golfers per year that seek emergency treatment in the U.S. for golf ball injuries, 40,000 per year, with a typical liability ranging from 500,000 to $3 million, in some cases upwards of $30 million liability. And this kind of leads to the question of safety and liability for the city of Miami Beach. If somebody gets hit, God forbid, by one of these balls and doesn't have proper protection, I don't think anybody wants to see anyone get injured or have the city be on the hook for some massive liability. I understand the city wants to add more bike lanes, but this appears to be simply, to be being done just to check a box to get a section done. I think the community understands that it's not actually needed in the section. And to the point of drainage, adding more hardscape without first addressing drainage along Meridian will result in additional flooding on the street, creating hardship for the property owners, which I think would be wrong to not address drainage before even contemplating something like this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Brian. We'll make sure to take that back as we continue to review. I'm going to turn it over to our next caller, Jerry. If you can please unmute yourself there and state your question or comment for the team. Jerry, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. I guess the first thing I'd say is that I favor green transportation, especially in an urban area like Miami Beach. I think it's a great idea. But to bookend that, I think it's a terrible idea, this pathway, for several reasons. And I'm going to try and go through them as quickly as I can. You say you've identified the hot spots or you're working with a golf course to identify them. I've played in that golf course for 15 years. There is not one place along that entire pathway stretch that's proposed that is not in danger of having golf balls fly through it. There's not one spot. And as I said, I've been playing there for 15 years. So I've seen balls go into the hedge and across the road in every one of those spots. So that's the first thing. So if you're going to have to put a netting up, you're going to have to put it basically across the entire stretch of that pathway. And I don't think you want to do that. Number two, I do ride my bike to the golf course, and I ride it almost regularly every day. And I go down Meridian. I don't have a problem on Meridian, the road as it is. And I'm a cyclist. I don't wear a helmet, and I'm very safety conscious, other than not wearing a helmet. But I don't have a problem with going along that stretch of Meridian at all. So to put a bike path in that encroaches onto the golf course, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think I'm echoing Brian's point with that. Number three, when you look at the entry point at Dade, there's three very mature trees that are there. And someone said, well, we're going to have to take them out and replace them or something. Those are three beautiful trees that are there right now. You'd have to take those out. And boy, I don't know how old those trees are, but they're a real feature. I'm not talking about the palms. I'm talking about, I'm not quite sure of the type of tree they are, but they're largest trees and they're very lovely. So that's a concern. Perhaps more importantly, when you think about the disruption to the golfers, each of the entry points at 28th and at Dade, there are forward tees. So that's typically, the seniors play from the forward tees. And often the ladies will play from the forward tees. That entry point is right there. And so it's a huge distraction if you have to worry about people cycling by. And I'm not, they'll be talking, chatting, or whatever. You can't be sure that they won't be. But the disruption of a moving cyclist coming through when you're trying to tee off, it's just a very disruptive thing. And you've got this jewel of a golf course. Do you really want to do that? Same thing at the 28th. The forward tees are right at that junction, and there's tees just behind that. There's a water station there, if you recall. And just back of that, there's also tee boxes. So I just think it's for those three or four issues, it just doesn't make any sense to me to go forward with this project.
Thank you very much for your comments, and the comments about the golf course are duly noted. I think part of the discussion, as the team has already said, they are working with the golf course to ensure that netting and all of the proper procedures are in place should the project move forward. And so we do appreciate your comments on that. And then, of course, all the other questions that you have shared with us and comments that you shared with us, we'll definitely make sure to take them back with staff. I know you had a comment with respect to mature trees. I don't know if Peter, who is on the call, perhaps can provide some additional input with respect to what you all are proposing concerning mature trees along the actual stretch between Meridian from Dade to 28th Street.
Yes, those are two or three large sea grape trees at the entrance there in the identified area of the path. Those would have to be removed. We are proposing mitigating for all trees removed along the project, and there's potential for installing new larger mature trees. We don't have to install the minimum size tree at every point here. Those particular trees were assessed by our arborist, and they do look aesthetically very good. They are actually not in the best of health. I believe some of them are in the range of 50 to 60% health. But point taken in terms of they are an aesthetic feature there.
Thank you very much. We're going to turn it over to the next caller, Seth. If you can please unmute yourself there, state your question or comment for the team and your full name.
Hi, thank you guys. My name is Seth Cassell. I'm the owner of 2800 Prairie. That's where I live. Can you share as much detail as possible about what that end of the path will look like and the way in which it connects to the existing bike path trimming prairie, I guess just kind of north and east of my house? And whether that can happen now on the call or if there's a way to access that information or have it sent to me, I would just like to have as much visibility as possible into what actually will be happening, My primary concern is just a lot of back and forth in front of the house, and we have a gate. And there's already people who bike on the sidewalk sometimes, and it's just a little bit treacherous. And I just want to make sure that this is going to alleviate that, not exacerbate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. And before we turn back to that slide, if you'd like, my contact information is on the screen. I want to make sure that you are signed up to receive our project updates. If you are not, please send me an email and I will be happy to sign you up. There will be an email after the meeting, just a post-meeting recap with a copy of the presentation as well as a recording for the call. So I want to make sure that you have that information at your disposal. And if Arnaldo, you can go back to this slide on the presentation, just that goes over sort of the exact portion that Seth was referring to. I believe it's his house on 2800.
Yeah, so thank you, Seth, first for your comment. We understood, and initially we actually did have the path extending um, through there, but understanding there would be concern from residents and in coordination with transportation, we're actually ending the path before that property. So at the property line between the golf course and your property. Um, we will connect. There's an existing sidewalk there that just ends. That's what we're connecting to. We'll have, cyclists to dismount or cross. You'll notice we did include a crossing on the street. Right now, it leads nowhere because it's not part of the scope. But as we mentioned, or I believe we mentioned, there's a transportation project there that is augmenting that intersection. Um, I cannot speak exactly as to their plan with cyclists. Last we had heard they would do a shared path along the roadway, so cyclists would share the road with
Yeah,
vehicles.
if I could
Okay.
jump in,
Oh yeah,
Arnaldo,
go ahead.
what he's referring to is the Bayshore South Traffic Calming Project. There is a modification to that intersection that is the connection point between there and the Prairie bike path and street. So there's a traffic circle planned for that intersection. I'm sure you've seen the recent crosswalks that were put in.
Yes.
Those are kind of ahead of the actual modifications to the street that are planned that are currently in permitting. I don't know if Gassan is still on the call and might be able to speak to that. I am happy to set up a meeting with the team and you so that we can show you what's coming. That is already in permitting, so we have that plan already developed.
Great. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll follow up as indicated to just get as much information just so I know it's coming. But
Yeah,
thank you for
happy
that.
to.
Excellent.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Seth, for your questions. I'm going to turn it over to our next caller, ND. If you can please unmute yourself there, state your full name and your question or comment for the team.
Hi, my name is Nicole Demore. I live on Meridian, and I just want to reiterate some of the other points that came before me. Arnaldo had mentioned, or somebody else had mentioned, that there would be no changes to the topography on Meridian, and I just want to know if any of you on the team have ever been to Meridian when it rains. The corner of Meridian and 28th is literally an ocean. It's like up to your knee, so. I think that goes back to the drainage that we've been asking about for years. I also know that over on Prairie, where the new park was built, we have an entryway that leads to nowhere because of the drainage over there. Um, that point being that there's so many unfinished projects in our neighborhood, and that everybody, you guys always say, oh, that's public works. Mr. Gomez and Gabrielle, I have emailed you numerous times about the speed bumps, and that has been in the works for over 5 years. And everybody just points the finger at everybody else. If everybody would just sort of get together and prioritize what's important to the residents, maybe we could move forward and have a better plan. My second point is the safety. Will the city of Miami Beach be liable when somebody gets hit in the head with a golf ball? I don't know if you guys realize how many golf balls end up in our front yard every day, and not just on the points where you pointed out on the pathway. 2 days ago, I was walking up Meridian on the sidewalk. My dog was hit by a golf ball. Every morning, I go out and look in my front yard and there's golf balls, and my yard has trees all along the front. I think that if you went door to door and asked people how many times their car has been dented, how many golf balls they collect in their front yard, I think you would actually be surprised. And despite the trees that you're going to put in, and none of us want netting, none of us want netting. Um, the liability that the city is going to face because some kid on a bike is going to get hit in the head with a golf ball, and that's going to be on you guys, truly.
Thank you very much for your comments. I do appreciate all of the feedback that you have shared with the team and duly noted. I will put my contact information at the end. I know that there were some items that you said that you had been pending follow-up from, and I want to make sure that I do close any of those open cases for you. So please feel free to email me. Thank you very much for putting that back there. Please feel free to send me an email, and I'll make sure to follow up with all the departments necessary and ensure that, those conversations are being held. I'm going to turn it over to the next caller. We have a call-in user 3. If you can please unmute yourself, state your full name and your question or comment for the team.
Okay. Hello. Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Goltanoff, and I want to thank you all for the comments and feedback that everyone in the area has provided tonight. I want to thank David Gomez. I think he gave a great explanation as to why this project is underway. Building a network of connected on-street and off-street bikeways and bike pathways is extremely important for this city, which is why a bicycle pedestrian master plan was developed and adopted. This is why this is a project from the transportation master plan. And these things do take many, many years. I was just listening, but I had to call in because one of the callers said it's a path to nowhere. It doesn't connect to places. I just came from the Scott Raquel Youth Center, picking up my daughter from an after-school activity, and we're heading back to South Beach. And we ride along Meridian Avenue every time. I just want to share with people that at nighttime, when it's dark, it does not feel safe to ride along Meridian Avenue. So having an off-street pathway will be something that is a great and a safe amenity. And also during high impact periods, like the boat show that's coming up, like Art Basel, like other big activities, Meridian Avenue does become very crowded, and it does become a place that is not necessarily the safest to ride. And this is a critical north-south pathway. So again, I just want to reiterate that and offer another perspective as to why continuing to build up the bikeways in the master plan is so important and why a connected network is critical. With that, I'll conclude. So thank you very much for hosting this evening.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for your comments. I'm going to turn it over to our next caller, Allison Block. If you can please unmute yourself there, state your question or comment for the team.
Hi, I live 2035 on Meridian, and so I just want to chime in. I'll keep mine really brief. I think everybody's making some really good points here. Personally, I live right past the up two apartment buildings at the end, and my view to the street every time I back out of my driveway is blocked by all the cars that park to the right. And I can't tell you how many times I have almost hit a biker very slowly trying to get out of my driveway because people come zooming along there. So I get what you guys are doing. I think it's really nice. I think everybody on here has made some really good points though. And I just want to add in addition to the netting, I'm concerned about the influx of people that will be coming on our pretty private street and also the light pollution that might be blocking our beautiful selling point views of the golf course from the lighting along the path. I don't know how bright it's going to be. I know you said it's going to be downlit, but still, I mean, there's a street light right in front of my house and it's so bright that it's ridiculous and it's shining right toward my house. So, I don't want more of that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Allison, for your comments. We appreciate that. I'm going to turn it to Arnaldo. If you can go back to the slide related to lighting and perhaps provide a better understanding of the temperature and what residents would be able to expect assuming the project goes through.
Yeah, actually, our electrical engineer was unable to make this meeting, so I can't speak too much about it. I do know that we are coordinating with the city to make it a warmer color, precisely taking into account, that we don't want to have too much spilling into the private residences to the east. But we'll make sure to note that and take that into account as we move forward in the
And this
design.
is, if I could just add, this is really an upgrade in the lighting that's there today. There are light fixtures there. I'm not sure what the photometrics will show once we start getting into measuring those lights and laying out the lighting, but these are really more modern, more efficient light fixtures that we're proposing.
Thank you both. I'm going to turn it over to our next caller, Morgan Theodore. If you can please unmute yourself there, state your question or comment for the team.
Hi, good evening. My name is Morgan Theodore. I'm an attorney and I'm a resident on Prairie Avenue as well. I also wanted to just ask about, the measurement of liability with regard to the shared use path. I know, I have kids, we bike, we walk, we're in the area a lot, and the boardwalk, which is a shared use path, is a nightmare for both bikers and walkers. I'm concerned because this is a particularly pedestrian heavy neighborhood, especially on Shabbat. And, have you inquired or measured the liability that will be brought by inviting bikers onto pathways that pedestrians are using, especially in those heavy time periods? I personally know 3 or 4 people that have been hit by bicycles on the shared use path on the boardwalk and sustained significant injuries from that. So, that's a concern of mine. As well, as it's less of a concern of mine, but I also, would like to point out that any home that, loses their view or their ingress and egress might be ripe for takings cases against the city. I don't know if that's been measured as well. I don't care if it's 10 feet or 150 feet. A $4 million house with a view of the golf course is not going to take it lightly when their view becomes a net. So, I'd like to know if the city's done any studies on, the cost of lawsuits that are going to result from this.
As an attorney, you probably are much more versed at those items than I am. Those are really questions for our city attorney's office. The bottom line in terms of personal injury, the improvement to landscaping, improvement to barriers ultimately leads to fewer incidents. So that's really what we're looking at with this path.
Thank you, David. And I know, Morgan, you had a question not only related to that, but you had a question with respect to the shared use path and sort of conflict between pedestrians and cyclists. I know that Arnaldo, there was a slide in the presentation that showed the layout, I believe, of the shared use path. I'm not sure if there's anything else that you'd like to add with respect to that. And just for some perspective, Morgan is referring to our city's beach walk, which runs from the south to north end of the beach. It runs parallel to it, but the beach walk in recent years has received some complaints with respect to the way that the beach walk path is being used, as far as cyclists running into pedestrians that are on the path. So I don't know if we're too early on in the plans to say how the actual path will be demarcated, but if there's anything that you can add with respect to that.
Yeah, there isn't much else to be added. First off, thank you for your comment. And it is a concern when we do multi-use paths. Um, we will be using signage to demarcate speeds for bicyclists. Obviously, we understand they don't always respect that. And then the geometry of the path, we're also trying to meander it in certain sections that is intended to force cyclists to slow down, to hopefully mitigate for those issues. And then obviously the path is 10 feet wide to accommodate both pedestrian and cyclist use. Though we understand the boardwalk you're referring to as that width or wider in some sections.
Thank you very much, Arnaldo. I'm going to turn it over to our next caller, who I believe is former Mayor Neeson Kazan. If you can please unmute yourself there, state your question or comment for the project team.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. Yes, I have a few comments on this. I was mayor when we redid the Miami Beach Golf Club, made it one of the premier courses in not only Miami-Dade County, but South Florida. It has served hundreds of residents of the beach annually as members and just as non-members who utilize the course, as well as being a tremendous asset for our better hotels. It has been financially very successful as well for the city. It is a large green space in the middle of the city. There are many problems with this proposed encroachment on the golf course. Number one, it will make it a less attractive golf course, less attractive for residents, less attractive for visitors. It will create more asphalt and paving where there currently exists green space. With respect to liability, there's no question but that it will greatly increase the city's risk of liability of golf balls hitting people on bikes there. As the residents and owners on Meridian Avenue testified, probably in the course of a day, dozens of golf balls fly over onto Meridian Avenue. I've put some there myself. Now, the solution of putting netting up is just plain ugly, and it will impact the quality. If you look at what's happened on Meridian Avenue in the last 10 to 15 years, people have built beautiful new homes. People have fixed up their homes. It is a high quality residential street. One of the greatest features of that street is that they have a beautiful, unobstructed view across the street of a golf course, of a green space. To put netting up will significantly impact, in fact, will greatly negatively impact their views as well. So this is bad from a liability standpoint. It's bad for the Miami Beach residents who pay annual membership for the Miami Beach Golf Club, and residents who don't have membership but pay to play there, which is a much larger number, will impact the quality of the golf course. It has potential safety issues as well. This is just a bad idea. You know, if you wanted to create a little bit more space for a lane for bicycles, I could potentially see it. But I think the city really has to think twice before it severely impacts the owners who've invested so much money in their homes on Meridian Avenue and considerably downgrades the quality and the appearance of the golf course, and also poses potential great safety hazards. This is not a smart idea.
Thank you very much for your comments. Again, we will be sure to take those back with the team as we further review throughout this process. I'm going to turn it back to Yelena. I believe you had your hand up there with a follow-up question.
Gabby, I have one comment, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, in regard to the netting, the golf netting that we are planning to install if needed, that is going to be actually only high enough to close the gap between the trees canopy and the top of the hedges. It's not going to be actually tall to the point where the houses will notice even the netting. That's my comment.
Thank you very much, Mohsen,
Thank you.
for the clarification there. I'm going to turn it over to Yelena, who I believe had a follow-up question for the team. Yelena, can you hear us, sir?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
I'm sorry, I'm having technical
No worries.
difficulties all day. Just as an endpoint, I mean, obviously, the feedback of this proposal isn't very favorable altogether. We would like to see the implementation of the traffic calming first done before we move on with any kind of path. This is something that definitely, I think, needs to be discussed within the neighborhood, a little bit more detailed. I think there's safety concerns. The netting is a huge concern, which I completely understand as well. Um, I'm not saying we don't believe in bike paths, yes, but bike paths are supposed to be safe and connect to major things. The way you guys portrayed it, it doesn't do any of that. So I would really respectfully like to ask the city before moving any further with this proposal to maybe organize some more meetings and truly discuss this and get the feedback from people that actually live within this neighborhood.
Thank you very much for those
I,
comments, Yelena. I will definitely make sure that we work with the team as we go through further stages of this project. Like David said earlier, we really are just in 30% design, and so this is our initial outreach to the community, but we will absolutely make sure to host more of these forums to gain as much input as possible. I'm going to turn it over to Paul de Andrade, who has a question for the team. If you can please unmute yourself there and state your question or comment.
Hey, yeah, I joined the meeting a little bit late, but I am for the bike path because I ride up and down that street with my son on my bike, and people fly down that road, and there's basically nowhere you can get out of the way if there's traffic going in both directions. The one question that I have is, was there anything brought up about continuing it down Dade Boulevard? Because if you live in Bayshore, there's literally no way to get to any of the grocery stores. Like every single grocery store, you have to go down Dade Boulevard to get to, whether it's the Publix or the whole well, any of them. So I'm just curious if that's been considered, because I think that would be even more helpful because that's an incredibly busy road.
Paul, we are actually in the process of getting ready to submit for permit for what we are terming a shared use path on the south side of Dade Boulevard. That is a very tight area, so officially we're kind of restricted on space, but it will be a wide sidewalk with the intent for pedestrians and bicyclists to use that instead of the river. And we are part of that. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, our transportation department began looking at potentially adding another crosswalk at Dade Boulevard and Michigan. So we'll look at that. That's yet to be seen. There's actually quite a number of projects between Public Works, CIP, Transportation, and the county along Dade Boulevard that we've got to coordinate all those projects to get those done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your comment. I'm going to turn it over to call-in user number 3. If you can please unmute yourself, state your full name and your question or comment for the team. Hello, can you hear us, sir?
Oh, yes. Hi. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. It's Matthew Goltanoff again. I had a follow-up comment for the team, for David Gomez and others. Listening to the testimony of many of the area residents, I think it's pretty clear they're concerned today about golf balls that are leaving the golf course. So I think that is something, irrespective of this bike path proposal from the master plan. I think that the balls that are hitting dogs, that are denting cars, that are going across the street, I think that needs to be addressed immediately. That's what I would take away from the overwhelming number of comments from the area residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, and we'll definitely make sure to share those back with our team as well. And turn it over to our next caller. I believe you had a follow-up for us there, ND, and I apologize.
That's okay. I just want to point out that the best way to make the bikers feel safer, like the gentleman who said that he felt unsafe with his son, is to install the speed bumps that you have been promising us for the past 5 years, and to make Meridian put a solid yellow line down Meridian. We should not be allowed to pass on that road because people do fly up and down that road and they pass each other at very high. In fact, I don't know if you can hear it now. There's someone speeding up there right now. But that is a really quick, easy fix to make bikers feel safer, is to put in some speed bumps and a solid yellow line. That simple.
So,
Thank
and
you very
I'm
much.
sorry, I didn't catch your name the first time you spoke. What's your name?
My name is Nicole Demore. You and I have emailed each other numerous times about the speed bumps.
Yes, Nicole, how are you? Pleasure to speak with you. The good news I have for you, and I don't remember in my last update to you where we were. We have issued the bid for the traffic calming project, which includes the speed bumps on Meridian. That bid will be on the street for 45 to 60 days. Then we've got to go through the process of awarding and starting the construction. So this summer, you should be seeing those speed bumps going in.
But I just want to put on the record that this has been in the works for over 5 years. And
I,
that's not something that the city should be proud of. That's
well,
something that the city should really look at your processes and how you guys go about projects. I mean, look at you guys built this beautiful park. And the path to nowhere that I was referring to is the path on Prairie. There's an entrance to the park on Prairie that you can't get to because there's a lawn full of mud because of the sewage system. There's no path that
and
reaches Prairie.
I'm happy to explain to you why and how that happened and
I
where we
would love to hear
started.
that.
Glad to sit through. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with this project, so I don't know that we want to tie up
Well,
everything.
it does kind of because we're talking about how we prioritize, drainage, and there's a drainage issue over there, there's a drainage issue over here. So it seems like drainage is not a priority for you guys, but we keep screaming at you that drainage is a huge priority for us, and nobody seems to be listening.
And I will refer you back to the project that was in place, that was underway when the neighborhood expressed their feeling that they didn't want us to proceed with the drainage project. So now that project has been pushed back and it will come later on when Public Works has it in their priorities.
So the
I
design team for the park just thought that it was okay to like
No, ma'am, one has nothing to do with the other.
but they kind of
The
do.
issue
It's
with
just
the
it's case
park,
in point that you guys aren't
the
talking to each other
the
and it
issue
and
with
it
the
makes our
park,
neighborhood look
but
half-assed. We have this
Nicole, if you don't
unfinished.
let me answer your question,
Go
I can't
ahead, go
explain what
ahead.
happened. The issue with the park has nothing to do with the drainage project. That swale area is part of a contaminated area that used to be the golf course that the county through Durham is not letting us do anything other than remediation. So we're trying to balance that with doing the connection, the final connection to get the crosswalk across the street to the sidewalks. We were able to handle it on the north corner at 28th and Prairie. We were able to put in those
Hmm.
crosswalks because it didn't imply or it didn't lean towards, it didn't result in additional permitting with Durham. This particular location requires additional permitting with Durham, which we're trying to resolve. And I think we're at a place where we have a solution. We've just got to implement it.
Thank you very much, David and Nicole. If there are any follow-up questions on that specific point, feel free to share an email with me and we'll be sure to connect with the rest of the team. Do want to be respectful of everyone's time and turn it over to the last few callers that we have. Dylan, if you can please unmute yourself there and state your question or comment.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I just wanted to follow up, Dylan Yalis. I spoke earlier. So again, on this question, just listening to some of the cyclists, and again, very much support cycling and safe transportation and so on. But it does sound like, the concern is specifically around certain rush hour times and perhaps certain specific speeders. And I would echo the point, like if the speed bumps or traffic calming is due to be installed, perhaps that should be installed first. And then let's see if we still have a problem with that particular issue. And maybe the cyclist will be much happier. The second thing, which hasn't been mentioned, I've noticed this, that there is basically no police enforcement of speeding. Um, and, when people know that they can speed and drive in a maniacal way, they will. Meridian actually there's a lot of other streets where it's an even bigger problem, but I just feel like, is there a way to just get better speeding enforcement? Perhaps that will also solve the problem. The combination of traffic calming and speeding enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan, and I will definitely take back the speeding concerns to our police department to ensure that there is a continued active presence of our police officers within the neighborhood, and hopefully that'll curb some of the poor conduct in driving that you're seeing out there. I'm going to turn it over to Morgan Theodore. If you can please unmute yourself and state your question or comment.
Hi, yes. Just to piggyback on what was just said, there's a way to do hybrid projects that would probably satiate both sides, like increase lighting for safety versus, going the whole 9 yards and just doing the lighting portion. It would save the city a significant amount of money and probably waylay safety concerns. But another point I want to make, again, just based on priority of projects, and I do understand there's a multitude of projects in the works, but there's portions of Royal Palm and Sheridan that have zero sidewalk on either side whatsoever. So, and then there's zero way to cross Pine Tree. I see pedestrians, and I've myself unfortunately done it, run across Pine Tree dodging cars, which couldn't be more dangerous. I mean, if we're gonna prioritize, foot traffic, bike traffic, then I do agree that there are priority projects that come way before this. Um, that would allow for contiguous pathways for both pedestrians and bikers, as opposed to just prioritizing this one issue for bikers. So, I'd like to just put that out there as well.
Thank you very much, Morgan, for those comments. We do appreciate that, and we appreciate all the participation that we have received on this project. Again, I just want to reiterate my contact information is on this screen here. If there are any follow-up questions that you have for the project team or anyone on the call, please feel free to send me an email and I will make sure to forward off your questions and comments to the project team and ensure that you have an appropriate response. If you have not already signed up to receive our project updates, I just also want to add, and even if you aren't sure, just send me an email and I will make sure to add you to our email database. After this call, some point tomorrow, I will definitely be putting together a post-meeting recap. It'll include a link to the presentation, a copy of the presentation, as well as of the meeting recording. And then, of course, a project page will also be created that'll host all of this information. So we want to make sure that you are all staying in tune throughout this process, and we will ensure to continue to communicate additional updates with you all through those email updates. I'm going to turn it back to Carla for some final remarks related to DRB and just to close us off.
Awesome. So, like we mentioned, this is our first reach out. This is the first time we have something on paper where we can tell you, hey, this is the proposal. We appreciate the feedback. That's why we do this, so we know how the neighborhood's feeling and take that into consideration. We have an upcoming presentation to the Design Review Board next week, Thursday. That starts at 9 a.m., I believe. It is in Commission Chambers, and you can also watch virtually. And the project application number is on the screen if you wanted to follow up or attend that meeting as well.
Thank you very much, Carla. Again, we want to thank you all for participating, and we appreciate everyone staying on the call. And thank you to the project team for the presentation and assistance with all of those questions. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your evening.